Hello and welcome to Talks at ESSEC. I am Arjit Chatterjee, Professor of Strategy. We have with us today Srikumar Misra, CEO and founder of Milk Mantra, which has recently been ranked one of the fastest growing ventures in Asia. Srikumar, welcome to ESSEC.
Thank you, Arjit. Good to be here.
Thanks. Uh, can you please tell us what does Milk Mantra do, what do you sell, and what do you operate?
So Milk Mantra is a consumer dairy foods venture which I founded around 6-7 years back in India, with the whole idea of addressing the consumer trust deficit that exists in the food value chain. So there's significant issues around adulteration, contamination, and the quality of end products that consumers get, and there is a trust deficit because of that. So Milk Mantra was made to solve that problem of that consumer trust deficit by developing high quality dairy foods, and through a whole organized supply chain, which we call our ethical milk sourcing program, wherein we have more than 55,000 farmers. So we essentially control the entire value chain integrity to have this high quality product, and our brand Milky Moo, which sells across eastern India.
Okay, so 55,000 is a huge number. In terms of revenue, can you share with us where are you currently and where do you aspire to be a few years later?
Right. So in the last 5 years, 6 years of our existence, we've grown significantly, and this year we should be closing at a number close to 30 million US dollars in terms of our revenue. And the plans are significant in terms of building the largest fresh dairy company in eastern India in the medium term. So that's one of the sort of number driven milestones that we have at the company. And if you were to ask me, what's that number, quite clearly, in the next 3-4 years we're looking at having a $100 million turnover. So taking this 3 to 4 times of our current levels in the next 3 years is what we are looking at, both organically and inorganically.
Wow. How many years it has taken for you to reach the 30 million mark?
Yeah, it's taken us about 6 years to reach the 30 million mark, which is when you look at the Indian consumer products market, scaling is a big challenge. There are several issues because of the fragmented nature of the market and the kind of margin structures, the supply chain, and all of that. So it's taken us six years to reach that. However, the curve that we are following, we believe we will continue to have that kind of strong, robust, near exponential growth over the next ensuing period.
Okay. I'm sure there were numerous challenges along the way. Can you share with us 2 or 3 major challenges?
Yeah, I mean, there have been sort of a huge amount of, a huge number of challenges in setting up and scaling Milk Mantra. I think the first and foremost, probably the biggest challenge I faced was all around funding. When I started Milk Mantra in India back in 2009-10, there was very little, real seed capital, early stage venture capital in the country, and whatever little was there was either present in Bangalore or Bombay, getting into ventures there, and on top of that into sectors like e-commerce. So to build a consumer food products brand through venture capital was just not a model that existed. So raising capital was a huge challenge for me. It took me 20 months almost to raise my first round of $5 million and it took me sort of to get it from 22 angel investors, one lead impact investor then, and the banks to put all of that together. So that was a kind of big challenge, and ultimately Milk Mantra became India's first agri-foods venture to be VC funded. So that was one of the early pangs of starting out. Going ahead, as we move forward, I think one of the other challenges was the entire back-end supply chain. We thought we were doing significant work in building and innovating on developing a great product, but when we looked at the supply chain, given the highly disaggregated nature, we put in the infrastructure and organized our whole ethical milk sourcing program. And when we launched it, sort of day one, we had just 7 farmers with 35 liters of milk. So I started wondering, is this all going to work out or not? Then we realized that that whole piece would not be built brick by brick as we assumed, but it will be pebble by pebble. So a lot of work had to be done on that front. So that was one of the other challenges. I think as we've scaled and moved forward, I think the challenge that I have right now is that we've been used to growing at more than 50% every year, but as we're kind of larger now, that growth rate sort of is coming down to the sort of 20s and 30s, which is not an area that I'm comfortable in. So I want to put it back into that close to 40% growth trajectory back on. So I think that's the more recent challenge that we are in, and we're kind of actively looking at addressing that.
I hope it's a happy challenge, because I don't know how many companies grow 50% year on year. So 20% or 30% is bad news for you. You want to bring it up to 40%.
Yeah.
That's great. What kind of competition you are facing from the more well-established brands? And do they have any advantage over you, or where do they lack? Because what is preventing them to move from 35 liters to 100,000 liters a day?
Right. So I think quite clearly the edge that we have over competition, which is difficult to replicate, is entirely on the product quality, the innovation that we have. And it's not a one-time job. We are continuously innovating, making our products better and all of that. So I think that's an edge that competition will find, and continuously has been finding extremely difficult to match. And that kind of is because of the overall value chain function of how we integrate and manage quality. So this whole design thinking towards product development has to be there. So that's something which we have. Where competition clearly enjoys an advantage is because of being decades in the market ahead of us. They've got very deep distribution networks, and which are at times unfairly protected in the wrong way and do not allow us entry. So that's one area where we kind of do a lot of work in, because it's a perishable product. It cannot sell in the ambient temperature. It has to be chilled. So all of that is a big challenge for us compared to competition. But since we have the consumer traction, because consumers love the Milky Moo brand, we are kind of progressing on that consistently.
Okay. But coming back to my question, so do the well-established brands have an advantage over you?
Yeah. So like I was saying, so their advantage is in the domain of distribution.
Okay.
Okay. So I would say that's just about the only advantage that well-established brands have over us.
All right. So you're growing at a phenomenal rate. You want to make it 100 million in the coming 3 to 4 years' time. As you are growing, what worries you most? What keeps you awake at night, if it does?
So we've made this whole promise to the consumer that it's truly pure. That's the whole proposition. The basic promise that we make to the consumer is about being truly pure. So as we scale and kind of grow, one of the worries that I have is that we have to have the processes, systems in place, and not just process systems. The people that we continuously hiring, the team size is increasing. They have to be very focused in kind of this whole approach of having the highest quality. So that's a DNA level thing that we are infusing in our teams. So to ensure that we always remain truthful to that promise at whatever cost. So I think that's one of the sort of key things. And the other part is this venture Milk Mantra I've built with this whole thinking or a belief in conscious capitalism. So that we're here to make a highly scalable, one of the fastest growing, one of the brands with the highest margins in the sector, but with a clear conscious capitalist belief that as we grow, we will impact our entire value chain. The farmers especially need to grow with us. That's a thinking which has to be ingrained across the company, the team, and everyone. So that's something that sometimes I feel that we have to work extra hard at times to kind of make sure that everyone in the company is completely aligned with that. I think culture and this whole focus on sort of product quality, these are the two things that we need to be absolutely clear about.
I read somewhere it says culture eats strategy for breakfast. So clearly you are worried about culture, how to maintain culture while you are growing. What excites you the most in this industry?
So I think it is one industry which really gives you the ability to create significant impact and solve not one but multiple problems. So look at the large market like large country like India, where there are huge issues around nutrition. So we couldn't be better placed to solve this whole problem of nutrition, and not just through our regular products, but through actually, because dairy is a great carrier as well, so we have the ability to infuse it with fortification. So this whole ability and the opportunity to solve this nutrition problem of nutrition in a very large impactful way is something that is extremely sort of exciting. The other problem that by doing so we are also solving another problem, and because of our whole thinking around ethical sourcing, is by connecting the thousands of farmers that we have, which will continue to grow. So I think in the medium term itself, we will be impacting more than 1 million lives in the rural ecosystem because of this. So the opportunity to solve this problem of nutrition in the front end and impact a million rural lives in the medium term itself is something that's extremely exciting for all of us.
This is very interesting because we have been talking of corporate social responsibility in the classroom, or CSR in short. What I hear is CSR is sort of built into the business model of Milk Mantra.
Yeah, absolutely. You kind of hit the nail on the head on that. This is how when anybody asks us about CSR, we said we don't think of it as CSR. It's inherent in our business model itself. The impact is inherent in a business model, and it's something that strengthens our business as well. So just like you said, it's part of the business model itself.
You also mentioned about nutrition, right? Can you give us an example of fortification, if you have done fortification in any of your existing products?
Yeah, of course. I think I'll give you kind of two examples. So one is there's a large deficiency of vitamin A and D, in India. So we've just recently launched a product which is kind of a fortified milk, which we call Milky Moo Super, which is fortified with vitamin A and D, and it's a more creamier milk also. So this whole fortification is one area where this whole vitamin A and D fortification is one area where we're looking at in terms of nutrition, addressing nutrition. The other area where actually we've developed a product which is the world's first milkshake with curcumin. Curcumin is the active ingredient of haldi or turmeric, as we know, and it exists only to the extent of 4 to 5% naturally in turmeric. We've taken 95% pure curcumin and developed this great product in a shelf-stable way through our whole process of infusing curcumin in there. We have a patent pending on this product in US and in India also. So that's the other product which I believe in due course as we move forward will become a significant opportunity.
Great. We're coming to the end of our interview. Before we leave, any tips for our students in terms of their life objectives or career choices?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that I'd say is that have single-minded pursuit. So if there is something in your career that you want to kind of pursue, be it if it is about working in a great company, or if it is starting out your own venture, whatever it is, I mean, one should be very single-minded in its pursuit, especially in the sort of formative years of one's career, because that's when you really build your entire ethos of how your career will kind of pan out. So that's single-minded pursuit. And I think the other thing is, I clearly something which has been spoken about. It's about passion. Unless one believes in, is passionate about whatever area one works in, it is just going to be very difficult. I mean, we spend half, more than 2/3 of our everyday lives at our work, and if we are not passionate and if we don't love it, then it's going to be they will be spending the rest 1/3 of everyday life trying to solve that problem itself.
Great. Any specific advice for students who want to launch their own business?
Yeah, I think being an entrepreneur is absolutely fantastic. You're not just solving a problem. You're actually creating employment. You're impacting the ecosystem. You're creating value. So a lot of those things for everyone. But again, the same thing I would say, especially for people who want to become entrepreneurs, single-minded pursuit is absolutely critical. You have to kind of go, hammer and tongs with a single-minded pursuit. But at the same time, I actually don't believe being an entrepreneur is a career choice. It's more of a calling, so it has to be done at the kind of right time. Some people think that we will study and become an entrepreneur. It's not a career as a job is. So it's very different. Your entire life, 25 hours of your everyday life is going to get into being an entrepreneur. So it's a very different thing. And also, I think this whole stereotyping of entrepreneurs that as soon as you get out of college, or even be a dropout and
or the garage thing.
Yeah, I think that stereotype is really not the case. Students can go out and get very good jobs, work on them, and at the right time when they feel it's right for them, just embark on becoming entrepreneurs. But important to identify the right problem and not go at solving a non-problem. So identify a large scalable problem and go out and be an entrepreneur to solve it.
Great. One final question. We have been teaching entrepreneurship in the classroom. Many of the things are not taught in the classroom. One of the things which I find very strange is that people don't talk about, but people realize, that the importance of the support of your family or spouse when you're launching your own business. If you don't have that support, I would hazard a guess that it wouldn't be a successful venture. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely critical, I would say, especially for, I think, more often in a context where family values are more more prevalent or important than in a context where individual pursuit is more important. So if having your family or especially your kind of spouse to be aligned with what one is doing is absolutely a great support. And if that happens, then I think your probability of doing things in a smoother way get enhanced.
Thank you, Srikumar. It was nice talking to you.
Thanks, Oriji.
Thank you.